The desert stretches endlessly, a sea of golden dunes that shift with the wind, hiding secrets that have been buried for millennia. To the casual traveler, it is a land of silence, of heat, and of desolation. But beneath the scorching sun and the drifting sands lie remnants of civilizations that once thrived, kingdoms that flourished and vanished, leaving behind whispers of their existence. These are the forgotten kingdoms beneath the sands, realities almost erased from history, waiting to be discovered by those who dare to seek them. The story begins long before modern borders were drawn, when deserts were not barren wastelands, but the lifeblood of trade, culture, and knowledge. Caravans traversed these deserts, connecting empires across continents. Among the most mysterious of these ancient lands was the kingdom of Ubar, often called the Atlantis of the Sands. Traders spoke of it in hushed tones. Travelers whispered about its grandeur, and ancient texts suggested it was a city of unimaginable wealth. Its walls were said to glimmer in the sunlight, and its streets were lined with buildings crafted from stone that never seemed to crumble. Yet Ubar's story is not one of simple triumph. Legends tell of its sudden disappearance, swallowed by the desert itself. Some say it fell because its people angered the gods. Others believe it was a victim of ecological collapse. Its wells dried up, and the desert claimed what remained. Modern archaeologists have scoured the sands for traces of this lost city, finding ruins and inscriptions that hint at a vibrant culture, but leave more questions than answers. How could such a thriving city vanish almost without a trace? Traveling west from the Arabian deserts, we encounter another enigma, the Nabateans. Unlike Ubar, the Nabateans left behind monuments that still capture the imagination today. Most famously, the city of Petra, carved into the rose-colored cliffs of Jordan. Their civilization thrived on trade, controlling vital caravan routes that brought spices, incense, and precious stones from distant lands. They built elaborate water channels and cisterns, demonstrating remarkable engineering skills for a people who lived in such an unforgiving environment. But what is often overlooked is how transient their power truly was. Petra, once bustling with merchants and travelers, eventually declined as trade routes shifted and empires rose and fell. The desert, ever patient, began reclaiming the city. The structures carved into cliffs now seem almost timeless, yet they are reminders of a culture that, despite its ingenuity, could not escape the tides of history. Further south, hidden in the harsh Sahara, existed the Garamantes, a civilization that thrived in what is now modern Libya. Unlike other desert societies, the Garamantes were masters of irrigation. They dug underground tunnels, known as fogaras, to bring water from distant oases, creating fertile lands where none should exist. They traded extensively with Mediterranean empires, offering gold, ivory, and exotic animals in exchange for goods they could not produce themselves. Despite their ingenuity, the Garamantes too vanished. Their cities were abandoned, their tunnels collapsed over centuries, and little remained to tell the tale of their sophistication. Only the traces of their irrigation systems, visible to those who know where to look, hint at a civilization that had found a way to thrive against impossible odds. But why do these stories captivate us? Perhaps it is the mystery of disappearance, the sense that an entire culture can exist and then be erased almost entirely from memory. Or perhaps it is the resilience these civilizations displayed, building cities, developing trade, and mastering the harshest landscapes known to humanity. Each lost kingdom beneath the sands offers lessons not only about survival, but also about the fragility of human achievement. As the sun sets over the dunes, painting the desert in fiery reds and oranges, one can almost imagine the streets of Ubar bustling with traders, the grand facades of Petra glowing in twilight, and the intricate water systems of the Garamantes flowing with life. These are not just stories of the past. They are reminders that beneath the surface of our world, hidden in plain sight, lie histories waiting to be uncovered. The desert does not forget, but it keeps its secrets close. To uncover them requires courage, patience, and a willingness to listen to what the sands have to say. For every grain of sand is a fragment of history, and in their whispers lie the tales of civilizations long gone. Even today, explorers and archaeologists continue to search for these forgotten kingdoms. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and ancient manuscripts are slowly piecing together the puzzle. And yet, for every discovery made, countless questions remain. How did these civilizations communicate across vast deserts? What rituals and traditions shaped their societies? What caused their sudden declines? Some answers may never be found, but the pursuit itself is a journey into the unknown, a journey that connects us to the humans who walked these deserts thousands of years ago. And perhaps in understanding their triumphs and failures, we can gain insight into our own place in the world. Beyond the deserts of Arabia and the Sahara, the story of lost civilizations continues into the sands of Central Asia. The vast stretches of the Karakum and Kizilkum deserts hide remnants of settlements that once connected empires across the Silk Road. Merchants, soldiers, and travelers passed through these lands for centuries, leaving behind traces of human life in the form of fortified towns, watchtowers, and caravanserais. Yet today, many of these sites lie in ruins, their bricks and stones scattered by wind and time. One such forgotten city was Merv, located in modern-day Turkmenistan. At its height, Merv was one of the largest cities in the world, a center of learning, trade, and culture. Scholars from across the known world traveled there, exchanging ideas and knowledge. Its streets were lined with markets overflowing with silk, spices, and exotic treasures. Libraries housed scrolls of poetry, philosophy, and science, some of which rivaled the great collections of Baghdad and Alexandria. But Merv's greatness was fragile. Conquered and destroyed multiple times, it eventually succumbed to the harsh environment and shifting trade routes. Today, archaeologists uncover fragments of its past. A broken column here, the remnants of a mosque there. But the city's full splendor exists only in the imagination of those who study it. Merv is a testament to both human ingenuity and the impermanence of power. Traveling westward, the deserts of Egypt conceal stories older than even Merv. While the Nile gave life to some of the world's greatest civilizations, the surrounding deserts were home to smaller kingdoms and settlements, many of which are now forgotten. Explorers have discovered tombs and temples in these arid lands, some adorned with inscriptions that speak of rulers and peoples who left almost no other mark on history. These discoveries remind us that even in the shadow of monumental civilizations, countless smaller societies thrived, adapted, and eventually vanished. Yet it is not only the grandeur of cities that fascinates us. Sometimes it is the simplicity of survival in extreme environments that tells the most compelling stories. The desert demands resilience. Food and water are scarce. Temperatures swing between deadly heat and freezing cold, and the wind can erase entire footprints overnight. For those who lived here, every well, every oasis, every caravan stop was vital. Their stories are etched into the landscape, waiting to be read by those who know how to look. Consider the Thar Desert in India and Pakistan. Archaeological evidence suggests that nomadic communities once moved across its shifting sands, creating temporary settlements and relying on trade networks that connected distant villages. Pottery shards, tools, and the faint outlines of dwellings provide a window into their daily lives, revealing how humans adapt to the harshest of environments. These forgotten communities may not have built monumental cities, but they represent the enduring spirit of humanity, a spirit capable of enduring even the harshest climates. And as we trace the stories of these civilizations, one cannot ignore the role of trade and cultural exchange. Deserts were not empty voids. They were highways for merchants, carriers of ideas, goods, and beliefs. Ancient trade routes, such as the incense route in Arabia, linked remote desert kingdoms to bustling cities across continents. Frankincense, myrrh, spices, and precious metals flowed along these paths, enriching those who controlled them and shaping the course of history. The desert's harshness also fostered ingenuity. In the absence of rivers or fertile soil, civilizations developed remarkable engineering solutions. The Nabateans' water channels, the Garamantes' fogaras, and similar systems elsewhere show that necessity truly is the mother of invention. These structures remind us that survival often inspires brilliance, and that even in the most unforgiving landscapes, humans find ways to thrive. But why did these civilizations ultimately vanish? The reasons are as varied as the deserts themselves. Environmental changes, droughts, shifting sands, and climate fluctuations played a major role. Wars, invasions, and the collapse of trade networks sealed the fate of others. Sometimes it was a combination of factors, human ambition and environmental fragility intersecting in ways that led to sudden decline. And in some cases, legends and myths obscure the truth, leaving us only with fragments to interpret. It is this mixture of fact and legend that makes the study of lost desert civilizations so compelling. Each discovery sparks the imagination, yet each unanswered question reminds us of the limits of our knowledge. Archaeologists and historians piece together what they can, reconstructing cities, trade networks, and cultures. But the desert keeps its deepest secrets. Even satellite imagery and advanced technology can only reveal so much. The rest remains hidden beneath layers of sand, waiting for patient eyes to uncover it. And as we explore these ancient kingdoms, it is impossible not to feel a connection to the people who walked these lands thousands of years ago. Their lives, though distant in time, were filled with hopes, fears, struggles, and triumphs, emotions we recognize even today. By studying their stories, we learn not only about history, but about ourselves, about the enduring human desire to survive, to build, and to leave a mark on the world. Before we move deeper into the heart of the desert, let me take a moment to remind you, if you're enjoying this journey into forgotten kingdoms and lost civilizations, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more stories from the sands of time to life, uncovering secrets that have been hidden for centuries. As the sun rises over the dunes, casting long shadows that shift with every passing hour, the desert begins to reveal more of its hidden past. Among the most intriguing of these secrets are the oases settlements, small, often overlooked communities that dotted the vast expanses of sand, providing lifelines for travelers and traders alike. These settlements were not mere stopping points, they were hubs of culture, commerce, and human ingenuity. One such settlement existed in the heart of the Libyan desert, far from the Mediterranean coast. Archaeologists have uncovered remnants of a small city, its mud brick walls partially buried under centuries of drifting sand. Pottery fragments, tools, and inscriptions indicate a vibrant community, one that survived in one of the harshest climates on Earth. They cultivated crops using ingenious irrigation techniques, traded with distant lands, and maintained a delicate balance with the desert that surrounded them. Similarly, in the deserts of Iran, there were towns that thrived along ancient trade routes connecting Persia to Mesopotamia. These settlements may not have grown into vast empires, but they were crucial links in networks of commerce that spanned continents. Goods, ideas, and religious beliefs flowed through these towns, leaving traces that archaeologists are only beginning to understand. Every shard of pottery, every fragment of a manuscript, is a clue to a world long forgotten. Beyond the practical aspects of survival, the desert also shaped the spiritual lives of its inhabitants. Many civilizations viewed the desert not just as a place of hardship, but as a sacred landscape, a space where humans could encounter the divine. Temples and shrines were often built near oases or along trade routes, serving both travelers and local communities. Rituals, prayers, and offerings to desert deities were common, reflecting a deep respect for the forces that governed life in such unforgiving surroundings. Consider the Saharan rock art, found in regions now far removed from water sources. These carvings and paintings depict animals, humans, and symbolic scenes, offering a glimpse into the spiritual and daily lives of people who lived thousands of years ago. Some of the images suggest a time when the Sahara was not an endless desert, but a fertile land, teeming with life. A green Sahara, where agriculture and settlement were possible. As the climate changed and the sands advanced, these communities adapted, migrated, or vanished, leaving only these artistic expressions as testimony to their existence. The story of lost desert civilizations is not confined to the sands of Africa or Arabia. In Australia, the vast outback hides traces of Aboriginal cultures that adapted to arid environments for tens of thousands of years. Their knowledge of water sources, seasonal patterns, and survival techniques allowed them to endure in a landscape that, to outsiders, seemed inhospitable. Rock art and oral traditions preserve their histories, connecting modern generations to the past in a way that mirrors the stories of lost kingdoms elsewhere. In North America, the deserts of the southwest United States tell similar tales. The ancestral Puebloans, also known as the Anasazi, built complex settlements in cliffside dwellings, developing sophisticated irrigation systems to support their communities. Their sudden disappearance remains a subject of research and speculation, echoing the mysteries of desert civilizations across the globe. In many ways, the desert seems to test humanity, rewarding ingenuity but punishing complacency. Yet despite the challenges, the human presence in deserts was never passive. Trade, exploration, and cultural exchange flourished across these seemingly barren lands. The deserts were highways connecting distant civilizations, enabling not only the exchange of goods, but also of ideas, language, and art. From the incense traders of Arabia to the camel caravans of North Africa, people adapted to the environment while shaping it to their needs. Every route, every caravan stop, every oasis was a story in itself, a narrative of survival, ambition, and human connection. The mystery of these lost civilizations is heightened by the tension between visibility and erasure. Some cities, like Petra, have survived for centuries, their monuments carved in stone as if to defy time itself. Others, like Ubar, have been almost entirely swallowed by the desert, leaving only faint traces for those who know where to look. And still, many settlements remain undiscovered, hidden beneath dunes that shift with the wind, silently guarding their secrets. Modern technology has changed the way we explore these forgotten kingdoms. Satellite imagery, aerial surveys, and ground-penetrating radar allow archaeologists to detect patterns in the desert that were once invisible. Paths of ancient roads, foundations of lost cities, and even burial sites have been revealed using these methods. Yet technology alone cannot tell the full story. It requires human interpretation, patience, and imagination to breathe life into the stones, sands, and artifacts uncovered. And here lies the beauty of storytelling in this context. While evidence grounds us in reality, the imagination allows us to reconstruct the lives of those who came before. We can picture the traders loading their camels at dawn, merchants bargaining in bustling markets, children running through the streets of long-forgotten towns, and elders sharing wisdom under the shade of palm trees. These visions bridge the gap between the distant past and our present, reminding us that history is not only about dates and events, it is about people, emotions, and the choices they made in response to their environment. As we continue our journey deeper into the sands, we encounter tales of desert fortresses and hidden temples, places built not only for defense but also for devotion. Some were constructed along trade routes, providing shelter and security for weary travelers. Others were spiritual centers, where rituals and ceremonies connected humans to the divine forces they believed governed the harsh desert landscape. The architectural ingenuity of these structures is remarkable, often blending seamlessly with the surrounding terrain, using local materials and incorporating advanced engineering techniques. Among the many lost civilizations, one of the most captivating is the kingdom of the Sabaeans, located in what is now modern-day Yemen. Known in ancient texts as the land of Sheba, the Sabaeans were famed for their wealth, their impressive irrigation systems, and their far-reaching trade networks. Spices, gold, and incense flowed from their lands into distant empires, making them both prosperous and influential. The Sabaeans constructed elaborate dams and canals, transforming arid valleys into fertile fields. Their capital, Marib, was a hub of commerce, culture, and religion. Stone inscriptions reveal a society that valued law, trade, and learning. Yet, like many desert civilizations, it faced challenges that ultimately led to decline. Archaeological evidence suggests that a combination of environmental changes, including the collapse of their irrigation systems, and external pressures contributed to their fall. Far to the north, in the deserts surrounding Mesopotamia, smaller kingdoms thrived along the edges of rivers and oasis towns. These settlements were often overshadowed by the grand empires of Babylon and Assyria, yet they played crucial roles in regional trade and cultural exchange. Many left behind only fragments, a few clay tablets, remnants of walls, and traces of temples. Yet even these fragments tell stories of resilience, adaptation, and survival against the odds. The deserts of Central Asia also hide remarkable tales. The Kushan Empire, which controlled parts of present-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, established cities and trading posts along desert routes connecting China to the west. While their great cities like Bactria are known, countless smaller settlements remain buried under centuries of shifting sands. Each one holds potential insights into how trade, culture, and religion moved across the ancient world, shaping the societies we know today. Some of the most enigmatic stories, however, come from mythical cities that may have existed, or at least were believed to exist, deep in the desert. Legends of cities made of gold, underground fortresses, and entire civilizations swallowed by the sands have persisted for centuries. While modern archaeology has yet to confirm many of these tales, the persistence of such myths suggests they were rooted in real experiences. Travelers and merchants, encountering ruins and abandoned settlements, often embellished stories of grandeur and mystery, creating legends that would inspire generations. One of the most famous of these legends is that of Ubar, sometimes called Iram of the Pillars. Mentioned in the Quran and in Arab folklore, Ubar was described as a city of extraordinary wealth, with pillars reaching the sky and streets lined with treasures. Explorers have searched for centuries, and while some ruins have been identified in the Rub al-Khali or the Empty Quarter, the exact location remains uncertain. What is certain, however, is that the Arabian deserts were once home to thriving civilizations, whose traces have been scattered and hidden by time. The mystery of these civilizations is compounded by the deserts themselves. Unlike rivers or mountains, sand shifts constantly, erasing evidence, covering cities, and altering landscapes over centuries. Entire streets, walls, and even burial grounds can vanish, leaving only subtle hints for those who know how to interpret them. It is as if the desert is both a preserver and a destroyer, protecting artifacts from human interference while hiding them from view, guarding its secrets jealously. But even in their absence, the influence of these desert civilizations can still be felt. Trade routes established thousands of years ago shaped the flow of goods, ideas, and cultures across continents. Technologies such as advanced irrigation systems, stone construction techniques, and early writing systems spread from these desert communities to neighboring regions. In this way, the legacy of lost kingdoms is not entirely gone. It lives on in the innovations, stories, and cultural exchanges they inspired. Consider the desert of Namibia, where the remnants of the Tweefontein people tell a story of survival, artistry, and spirituality. Carvings in stone depict animals, humans, and abstract symbols, illustrating a society deeply connected to its environment. These inscriptions, some over 6,000 years old, serve as reminders that deserts were not empty, lifeless places. They were homes to people who observed, adapted, and created in ways that continue to inspire awe today. Similarly, in the Atacama Desert of South America, some of the driest lands on Earth, archaeologists have discovered evidence of early settlements that cultivated crops, mined minerals, and developed complex social structures. These civilizations thrived in conditions that would have seemed impossible to outsiders, demonstrating once again the resourcefulness and adaptability of humanity. The desert also shaped cultural practices and spiritual beliefs. Many desert civilizations viewed the harsh environment as a teacher, a place where endurance and resilience were rewarded, and weakness was punished. Religious rituals often centered around water, rain, and fertility, reflecting an acute awareness of the precariousness of life in the sands. Festivals, ceremonies, and offerings provided not only spiritual solace, but also a way to strengthen community bonds, ensuring collective survival in extreme conditions. It is in these rituals, art, and daily practices that the human story is most vividly preserved. Archaeologists can reconstruct the architecture and trade networks, but the emotional and cultural lives of these people emerge from the symbols, inscriptions, and oral traditions they left behind. These traces allow us to imagine children playing in the shade of oasis trees, merchants bargaining in bustling markets, and families gathering to celebrate seasonal festivals. Ordinary moments in extraordinary landscapes. As we continue our journey through the sands, we see that deserts, despite their apparent emptiness, are archives of human history. Every dune, every rock, every ancient water channel is a page in a storybook written over thousands of years. The challenge lies in deciphering these stories, separating myth from reality, and honoring the ingenuity and resilience of those who came before us. To truly understand the lost civilizations of the desert, one must look beyond their monumental structures and trade networks, and into the daily lives of their people. Survival in such harsh environments required meticulous planning, community cooperation, and an intimate knowledge of the land. From dawn to dusk, life was dictated by the rhythms of nature, the availability of water, and the shifting sands that could alter the landscape overnight. In many desert settlements, homes were built using locally available materials: mud bricks, stone, and palm fronds. These structures were designed not just for shelter, but for climate control. Thick walls insulated against the blistering heat of the day and the freezing cold of the night. Courtyards provided shaded spaces for work and social interaction, while rooftops were often used for drying crops or observing the surrounding terrain. Every architectural choice reflected a deep understanding of the environment and a desire to live in harmony with it. Water, naturally, was the most precious resource. Wells, cisterns, and intricate irrigation systems ensured that communities could survive even in periods of drought. For the Nabateans of Petra, water was a symbol of life and power. They constructed dams, channels, and reservoirs that channeled scarce rainfall and spring water to their city, enabling agriculture and supporting a growing population. The Garamantes of the Sahara developed underground fogaras, long tunnels that transported water from distant sources to settlements hidden within the desert. Without such ingenuity, survival would have been impossible. Food in desert civilizations was often limited, but creativity and resourcefulness ensured that communities thrived. Dates, grains, legumes, and domesticated animals formed the core of the diet. Trading networks brought spices, dried fruits, and other delicacies from faraway lands, enriching daily life and connecting the desert to broader cultural and economic systems. Meals were both sustenance and social ritual, reinforcing family bonds and community cohesion. Trade itself was a central aspect of life. Caravan routes linked desert kingdoms to empires across continents. Merchants laden with goods like frankincense, myrrh, silk, and precious metals traveled for weeks or even months, navigating dangerous terrain and braving extreme conditions. The desert, though hostile, became a corridor of opportunity. Those who mastered it, through knowledge, skill, and adaptability, could accumulate wealth, influence, and prestige. Spiritual and cultural practices were also deeply intertwined with daily survival. Many desert peoples held beliefs that reflected their environment, viewing the desert as a living entity, sometimes benevolent, sometimes unforgiving. Rituals often focused on fertility, rain, and protection from natural disasters. Temples, shrines, and sacred stones were common features of settlements, serving as places of worship, gathering, and social cohesion. Music, storytelling, and art were integral to these practices, preserving traditions and reinforcing communal identity. Consider the rock art of the Sahara or the carvings of Aboriginal peoples in the Australian outback. These artistic expressions were not mere decoration. They conveyed stories, spiritual beliefs, and practical knowledge. They recorded migrations, seasonal changes, and encounters with animals. They immortalized leaders, warriors, and deities. Through these carvings and paintings, the past speaks to us, allowing glimpses into lives that existed thousands of years ago in landscapes that remain largely unchanged. Yet, despite their ingenuity and resilience, many desert civilizations ultimately faced decline and disappearance. Environmental factors such as prolonged drought, shifting sand dunes, and changing river courses could render once thriving settlements uninhabitable. Wars and invasions disrupted trade networks, weakened economies, and displaced populations. In some cases, a combination of internal mismanagement and external pressures led to sudden collapse. The desert, relentless and indifferent, claimed what humans had built with care and ingenuity. Take the example of Ubar, the legendary city swallowed by the Rub al-Khali. Archaeological surveys suggest that overuse of water resources, coupled with the changing climate, may have contributed to its disappearance. Similarly, the Garamantes and the Sabaeans faced environmental and social challenges that ultimately led to decline. These civilizations remind us of the delicate balance between human ambition and natural forces, and the fragility of even the most sophisticated societies in extreme environments. Despite their disappearance, the legacy of these desert civilizations endures. Their innovations in architecture, agriculture, and trade influenced neighboring regions and subsequent generations. The ruins and artifacts they left behind provide invaluable insights into human adaptability and creativity. Every wall, every water channel, every shard of pottery tells a story of a people who mastered the desert and lived full lives against seemingly impossible odds. And as we uncover these stories, it is impossible not to marvel at the resilience of humanity. The deserts, often seen as inhospitable and lifeless, were in fact vibrant theaters of human endeavor. They fostered ingenuity, endurance, and cultural richness, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire historians, archaeologists, and storytellers today. Beyond the tangible remnants of desert civilizations, the walls, canals, and artifacts, lies a realm of myth, legend, and unexplained mysteries. The desert has long inspired stories of vanished cities, hidden treasures, and civilizations swallowed whole by the sands. These tales, passed down through generations, blur the line between history and imagination, yet they often contain kernels of truth waiting to be uncovered. The Arabian desert in particular is steeped in such legends. Tales of Iram of the Pillars, a city said to have reached unimaginable wealth and splendor, have persisted for centuries. According to ancient texts, Iram's people were skilled in trade, architecture, and governance. But their story ended abruptly. The city disappeared, swallowed by the shifting sands. Explorers have searched tirelessly, using everything from ancient manuscripts to modern satellite imagery, yet the exact location remains elusive. The legend of Iram teaches us not only about the fragility of human achievement, but also about the desert as enduring ability to guard its secrets. Similarly, the Sahara Desert harbors countless stories of lost kingdoms, some documented, others known only through oral tradition. Nomadic tribes speak of abandoned settlements, wells that run dry overnight, and cities buried beneath dunes. Archaeological discoveries have occasionally confirmed these tales. Foundations, pottery fragments, and inscriptions emerging from the sands as though the desert itself had been holding them in reserve. Such discoveries remind us that myths often stem from real places and events, even if time and memory distort the details. In North Africa, the legendary city of Tikrit in Mauritania presents a compelling case. Built thousands of years ago, Tikrit was a hub of trade, agriculture, and culture. Its stone structures and circular dwellings reflect a sophisticated society that adapted to the desert's challenges. Yet over time, climate changes and social shifts led to its abandonment. Today, only remnants remain, slowly being reclaimed by the desert. The story of Tikrit is a powerful example of how civilizations rise, adapt, and sometimes vanish, leaving traces that inspire both curiosity and awe. Even in the vast deserts of Central Asia, legends abound. The Silk Road brought wealth and influence to desert settlements, but it also fostered stories of hidden cities and secret treasures. Travelers passing through these regions often exaggerated what they saw, creating tales of fortresses, palaces, and riches beyond imagination. While some of these stories are pure fiction, many are rooted in real settlements that have since disappeared under sand and time, leaving only fragments for modern explorers to discover. The desert's ability to erase and preserve simultaneously adds to the mystery. Sand can bury entire cities in a matter of years, hiding streets, temples, and marketplaces from view. Yet, in some cases, it preserves artifacts remarkably well. Pottery, jewelry, manuscripts, and even delicate tools can survive for millennia beneath the shifting dunes. This dual nature of destruction and preservation has fascinated historians and archaeologists for generations, making deserts one of the most intriguing landscapes for uncovering human history. Another fascinating example comes from the Namib Desert in southern Africa. Archaeologists have uncovered remnants of early pastoral communities that lived thousands of years ago. These communities survived through ingenious use of natural resources, constructing shelters and tools from local materials. Over time, however, environmental pressures and social changes led to their decline. The stories of these people have survived through rock art and oral tradition, offering a glimpse into lives that might otherwise have been forgotten. Desert civilizations were not only practical, but also spiritually rich. Many cultures associated deserts with divine presence, spiritual testing, and transformation. Temples, shrines, and sacred monuments were often constructed near water sources or along trade routes, creating focal points for community and worship. Rituals and festivals celebrated life, survival, and the forces of nature, reflecting a deep understanding of both the desert and the human condition. These spiritual practices helped communities endure hardships, strengthen social bonds, and maintain cultural identity. The myths surrounding lost kingdoms often carry moral and philosophical lessons as well. Stories of cities destroyed due to greed, hubris, or environmental neglect serve as warnings to future generations. The disappearance of Ubar, for example, has been interpreted not only as a historical event, but as a cautionary tale about the consequences of overexploitation and imbalance with nature. These narratives remind us that the desert, while harsh and unforgiving, also teaches resilience, humility, and respect. Modern technology continues to uncover secrets long hidden. Satellite imagery has revealed previously unknown ruins beneath desert sands, while ground-penetrating radar uncovers foundations and streets invisible to the naked eye. Even subtle depressions and patterns in dunes can indicate the presence of ancient settlements. Each discovery adds pieces to the puzzle, bringing us closer to understanding the scale, sophistication, and interconnectedness of lost desert civilizations. And yet, for every mystery solved, countless questions remain. How did these communities sustain themselves over generations in extreme conditions? What led to the sudden decline of some cities, while others persisted for centuries? How did trade, culture, and knowledge flow across deserts, connecting distant civilizations? The answers lie buried beneath the sands, waiting for explorers, historians, and storytellers to piece them together. Before we continue deeper into the heart of these desert mysteries, a quick reminder. If you're fascinated by the stories of lost kingdoms, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more tales from the sands of time to life, uncovering civilizations that the world almost forgot. Among the most fascinating desert kingdoms were those that not only survived the harsh conditions, but thrived culturally, politically, and economically. One such civilization was the Kingdom of Axum, located in the highlands bordering the deserts of northeastern Africa. While Axum is better known for its monumental obelisks and as a center of trade with the Roman Empire and India, its influence extended into the surrounding desert regions, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and culture across vast arid expanses. Axumite rulers were skilled in both diplomacy and warfare, ensuring that their kingdom remained prosperous even as neighboring regions faced instability. The desert, far from being a barrier, acted as a corridor for caravans transporting gold, ivory, and exotic animals. Axum's ability to harness desert trade routes allowed it to maintain wealth and influence, connecting it with distant civilizations. Today, the remnants of Axumite architecture and inscriptions reveal a society that valued learning, religion, and social organization, leaving a legacy that continues to captivate historians. Farther east, in the Arabian deserts, the kingdom of Hadramaut flourished. Known for its fertile valleys and sophisticated irrigation systems, Hadramaut became a hub for the incense trade. Spices, perfumes, and incense were highly prized commodities in the ancient world, and the kingdom's control over production and trade routes ensured its economic power. The architecture of Hadramaut, with towering mud brick structures and fortified cities, demonstrates a mastery of both engineering and aesthetics. Yet, like many desert kingdoms, its decline was influenced by shifting trade patterns and environmental changes, highlighting the delicate balance between prosperity and vulnerability in arid landscapes. In the deserts of North Africa, the kingdom of Garama, also known as the Garamantes, presents another compelling story. Emerging in what is now southern Libya, the Garamantes built an advanced society in the heart of the Sahara. Their underground irrigation tunnels, or fogaras, allowed agriculture to flourish despite the arid environment. Trade networks connected them to Mediterranean empires, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and culture. Despite these achievements, the Garamantes eventually disappeared, leaving behind only traces of their settlements and ingenious water systems. Their story exemplifies the resilience and ingenuity required to thrive in the desert, as well as the fragility of even the most advanced societies in extreme environments. One of the most enigmatic kingdoms was the lost city of Zerzura, often described in Arab folklore as a white city hidden deep in the Sahara. Travelers and explorers reported glimpses of it for centuries, describing lush oases, flowing rivers, and magnificent architecture seemingly impossible in the heart of the desert. Despite numerous expeditions, no concrete evidence has been found, leaving Zerzura as a symbol of mystery and possibility, a city that may have existed or may live solely in the collective imagination. Its legend continues to inspire adventurers and archaeologists alike, fueling dreams of discovery and the thrill of uncovering the unknown. The desert's role as both a guardian and eraser of history is evident in these examples. Cities rise, flourish, and decline, sometimes leaving behind monumental ruins, and other times disappearing almost entirely beneath the sands. The challenges of desert survival, scarce water, extreme temperatures, shifting dunes, and isolation, tested every aspect of human ingenuity, from agriculture and architecture to trade and governance. Those who adapted thrived, while those who failed were often lost to memory, their stories surviving only in fragments of myth and archaeology. Despite their decline, desert kingdoms have left a lasting cultural and technological legacy. Innovations in water management, architecture, and trade influenced neighboring regions and future civilizations. For example, Nabatean water channels informed irrigation practices in the Middle East, while Garamantian fogaras inspired underground water systems in other arid regions. Even today, these innovations are studied for their ingenuity, demonstrating that lessons from ancient deserts remain relevant in a world still facing environmental challenges. The daily life of desert civilizations also reveals a remarkable capacity for social cohesion and cultural expression. Markets bustled with activity, not only exchanging goods but also serving as venues for communication, storytelling, and negotiation. Artisans produced intricate pottery, jewelry, and textiles, blending practicality with beauty. Spiritual practices infused daily routines with rituals, prayers, and offerings reflecting the intimate relationship between humans and their environment. These elements combined to create societies that were not only functional, but also rich in culture and identity. And yet, even with all their achievements, desert kingdoms were often at the mercy of forces beyond their control. Droughts, invasions, and shifting trade routes could destabilize economies, while overuse of resources could undermine agriculture and water supply. In many cases, these pressures led to abrupt declines, leaving cities abandoned and populations dispersed. The desert, relentless and impartial, reclaimed what humans had built, covering streets, walls, and wells with sand, erasing evidence of lives once lived. This interplay of human ingenuity and environmental challenge is central to the fascination with desert civilizations. Each lost kingdom tells a story of ambition, adaptation, and vulnerability. The ruins, legends, and artifacts offer a window into societies that mastered one of the harshest environments on Earth, reminding us that survival requires not only skill, but also respect for the natural world. The deserts of the ancient world were more than mere landscapes. They were arteries of trade, culture, and knowledge. Across vast, inhospitable expanses, caravans carried not only goods, but also ideas, art, and belief systems, connecting civilizations that might otherwise have remained isolated. Understanding these trade networks reveals just how interconnected desert kingdoms truly were, and how their influence reached far beyond the sands they called home. Take the incense route in Arabia, for example. Stretching from the southern Arabian Peninsula to the Mediterranean, it facilitated the transport of frankincense, myrrh, and spices, commodities that were highly prized across the ancient world. Kingdoms like Hadramaut, Mayan, and the Nabateans grew wealthy by controlling strategic points along the route, providing shelter, water, and security for caravans. The desert, harsh as it was, became a corridor of opportunity, linking otherwise distant societies. The cities along these routes were bustling centers of commerce and culture. Merchants from Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean converged to trade goods and exchange knowledge. Markets overflowed with textiles, metalwork, ceramics, and exotic foods. Travelers brought news, stories, and innovations, ensuring that even isolated desert settlements were not cut off from the wider world. In this way, the desert itself became a facilitator of cultural diffusion, spreading language, technology, and artistic styles across continents. Further west, the Sahara was crisscrossed by caravan routes, connecting sub-Saharan Africa with North Africa and the Mediterranean. Gold, salt, ivory, and slaves were transported across these routes, often in caravans spanning hundreds of camels. Desert kingdoms such as the Garamantes controlled segments of these paths, ensuring safe passage and collecting tolls or tribute. The network of trade not only enriched these kingdoms but also fostered social and political connections, linking distant populations through commerce and mutual interest. Trade in the deserts was not without peril. Bandits, extreme weather, and shifting sands made every journey hazardous. Caravans had to carefully plan routes, timing, and supplies. Guides with intimate knowledge of the desert were essential, as even a single miscalculation could mean death. Yet, despite these risks, the rewards of trade were immense, incentivizing innovation, cooperation, and adaptation. Techniques for navigation, animal husbandry, and supply management were honed over centuries, ensuring the survival and prosperity of both traders and the kingdoms they served. Desert trade also facilitated cultural exchange in ways that left lasting legacies. Art, literature, religious ideas, and scientific knowledge traveled alongside goods. For instance, the Nabateans' mastery of hydraulic engineering influenced neighboring regions, while artistic motifs from Petra can be traced across the Middle East. Similarly, ideas from Axum, Hadramaut, and other desert civilizations spread through trade routes, shaping distant societies in ways that are still recognized today. The desert, therefore, was not a barrier but a bridge, connecting diverse peoples and ideas. Religious and spiritual practices also traveled along these routes. Temples, shrines, and sacred spaces were often established at key waypoints, where travelers could stop to pray, offer tribute, or seek guidance. Festivals and rituals became points of communal gathering, bringing together people from distant lands. Through these interactions, desert civilizations not only maintained their own traditions, but also absorbed new ones, creating a dynamic cultural tapestry that transcended individual kingdoms. Even the material culture of desert kingdoms, pottery, textiles, jewelry, and tools, reflects this interconnectedness. Excavations at desert trade hubs reveal artifacts from distant lands, demonstrating the movement of goods and ideas. Coins from faraway empires, inscriptions in multiple languages, and imported luxury items all testify to the complexity and reach of desert commerce. These objects, though often small, provide invaluable insights into how civilizations survived, thrived, and interacted across vast, challenging landscapes. The desert, it seems, was both a challenge and a facilitator. While its harsh conditions tested human endurance, it also fostered innovation, cooperation, and exchange. Civilizations that mastered desert life were rewarded with wealth, influence, and cultural richness. Those that failed were often erased, leaving behind myths, legends, and traces of ingenuity for future generations to discover. Consider the Silk Road's desert routes, which connected China with Persia, Arabia, and the Mediterranean. Caravans moved silk, spices, and precious metals through deserts spanning thousands of miles. Along the way, knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and art spread across civilizations, facilitated by desert travel. The sands were not merely empty expanses. They were conduits for human connection, enabling the rise of complex societies in regions that might otherwise have remained isolated. Yet, for all its contributions, the desert remained a place of mystery and danger. Cities could vanish, trade routes shift, and once fertile oases dry up. Environmental change, overuse of resources, or conflict could destabilize entire networks. In this sense, the desert acted as both benefactor and adversary, shaping civilizations in ways that were profound and unpredictable. And as we explore these ancient trade networks and the civilizations they supported, remember, the stories we uncover are not just about commerce or survival. They are about the ingenuity, resilience, and creativity of people who adapted to one of the harshest environments on Earth. Before we continue, a friendly reminder. If you're enjoying this journey through desert kingdoms and ancient trade networks, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep uncovering the secrets hidden beneath the sands, sharing stories that have been waiting for centuries to be told. As we delve deeper into the stories of desert civilizations, one cannot ignore the role of rulers and royal courts in shaping these kingdoms. Leadership in the desert required a unique blend of diplomacy, strategy, and resilience. Kings, queens, and tribal leaders were not merely ceremonial figures. They were central to survival, prosperity, and the maintenance of social order in harsh environments. Take the Nabatean kings, for example. Their authority extended beyond Petra's magnificent rose-red cliffs into the desert trade networks they controlled. The king was responsible for ensuring the safety of caravans, maintaining water supplies, and negotiating alliances with neighboring tribes and kingdoms. Leadership required both military skill and an understanding of economics, as the flow of goods and wealth depended on the delicate balance between protection and taxation. The king's court was a hub of administration, where merchants, advisors, and scribes worked together to manage the kingdom's affairs. Similarly, in Axum, rulers exercised power not only through military might, but also through religion and diplomacy. Kings were often considered semi-divine figures, intermediaries between their people and the gods. They oversaw trade agreements, organized the construction of monumental structures, and maintained relations with distant empires across Africa, Arabia, and beyond. Their courts were centers of learning, art, and culture, reflecting a sophisticated society that valued both governance and intellectual achievement. In the deserts of Arabia, the Sabaean rulers exemplified the integration of commerce and governance. Their kingdoms thrived on the control of incense and spice trade routes, and rulers ensured that wealth was efficiently managed and protected. Royal courts were not only administrative centers but also places where religious and cultural life converged. Festivals, rituals, and artistic endeavors were often sponsored by kings, strengthening social cohesion and reinforcing the ruler's legitimacy. Even smaller desert settlements had local leaders who played vital roles. Tribal chiefs or city elders managed resources, mediated disputes, and coordinated defense. In environments where water and food were scarce, leadership could mean the difference between survival and collapse. The desert demanded competence, wisdom, and vision, qualities that shaped the legacies of rulers whose names have survived only in fragments of inscriptions, legends, or archaeological evidence. Royal courts were also centers of cultural expression. Architecture, art, music, and literature flourished under the patronage of rulers who recognized the importance of preserving and showcasing their civilization's achievements. In Petra, the elaborate facades and intricate water systems reflect both technical skill and aesthetic sensibility, demonstrating that Nabatean leaders valued beauty and functionality in equal measure. Similarly, Aksumite stelae, inscriptions, and temples reveal a culture that celebrated both spiritual and civic life. However, ruling a desert kingdom was not without its challenges. Leaders had to contend with environmental pressures, such as droughts, sandstorms, and shifting riverbeds. Trade routes could be disrupted by conflict or political instability, undermining economic foundations. Internal tensions between rival tribes, cities, or social classes required careful management. In many cases, a failure to navigate these complexities led to rapid decline or collapse, illustrating the precarious nature of desert governance. Despite these challenges, desert rulers often left remarkable legacies. Their cities, fortresses, and infrastructure reflect not only technical skill, but also the organizational abilities required to mobilize labor, resources, and knowledge across vast, harsh landscapes. Even in ruins, these structures provide insights into the priorities and capabilities of the societies that built them. Every palace, temple, and city wall speaks to a civilization that mastered the desert, at least temporarily, through vision, leadership, and ingenuity. Some rulers became legends, their stories preserved in both history and myth. For example, accounts of Queen of Sheba describe her wisdom, wealth, and diplomatic skill. Traveling across deserts to meet the King of Israel, she became a symbol of intelligence, power, and cultural sophistication. Whether fully historical or partly legendary, her story reflects the broader significance of leadership in desert civilizations. The ability to navigate political, economic, and environmental challenges with skill and foresight. The societal structures of desert kingdoms were often complex, blending hierarchical authority with communal decision-making. Royal courts coexisted with councils of elders, religious leaders, and merchant guilds, creating systems that balanced governance, commerce, and cultural life. Social cohesion was essential in harsh environments, where cooperation could determine survival. Festivals, markets, and religious rituals were not mere celebrations. They were mechanisms for reinforcing bonds, distributing resources, and maintaining order. Even in decline, the influence of these rulers persisted. Trade routes continued to operate, architectural innovations inspired neighboring regions, and cultural practices were absorbed and adapted by subsequent societies. The legacy of desert kings and queens is evident not only in monuments and ruins, but also in the enduring myths, stories, and knowledge that have survived centuries of environmental and human change. To truly grasp the essence of desert civilizations, one must step into the daily lives of their people. Life in the desert was defined by extremes, blistering heat during the day, freezing cold at night, and the ever-present challenge of scarce resources. Yet, despite these hardships, desert communities thrived through ingenuity, cooperation, and a deep understanding of their environment. A typical day began with the first light of dawn. Families rose early to tend crops, feed animals, or prepare for journeys to nearby markets or water sources. Women often managed domestic responsibilities, including food preparation, weaving textiles, and childcare, while men focused on trade, herding, and defense. Children contributed as well, learning survival skills from a young age, navigating dunes, identifying edible plants, and caring for animals. Knowledge was passed orally and practically, ensuring that each generation could adapt to the demands of desert life. Water management was central to daily routines. Wells, cisterns, and irrigation channels required constant maintenance. In Petra, the Nabateans perfected a complex system of channels, reservoirs, and dams to capture and distribute water. These systems were vital not only for agriculture, but also for domestic use and caravan support. Communities coordinated efforts to ensure equitable access, reinforcing social cohesion and collective responsibility. The scarcity of water created a culture of vigilance, cooperation, and respect for resources. Food in desert civilizations was diverse and resourceful. Dates, grains, legumes, and domesticated animals formed staples, supplemented by traded goods such as spices, dried fruits, and rare delicacies. Meals were often communal, reinforcing family bonds and fostering community interaction. Feasts marked important occasions, harvest celebrations, religious festivals, and weddings, bringing together individuals from different households and, in some cases, distant settlements. Sharing food was both practical and symbolic, reflecting a culture deeply connected to survival and social harmony. Clothing, too, was adapted to the environment. Lightweight fabrics protected against the sun, while layered garments provided warmth during cold nights. Head coverings, robes, and sandals were essential, serving practical, cultural, and sometimes religious purposes. Artisans specialized in weaving, dyeing, and embroidery, creating garments that were both functional and expressive of social status. These textiles often incorporated patterns or symbols representing cultural identity, beliefs, or lineage, allowing individuals to carry their heritage through everyday life. Trade was an integral aspect of daily existence. Caravans set out on regular schedules, carrying goods across vast deserts. Merchants carefully planned routes, coordinating with guides and local communities to ensure safe passage. Markets in desert towns were bustling centers of commerce and social life. Beyond buying and selling goods, they were venues for exchanging news, ideas, and cultural practices. Music, poetry, and storytelling enriched these interactions, creating a vibrant social fabric that connected individuals across distances. Spiritual practices permeated daily routines. Temples, shrines, and sacred spaces were often visited during significant moments, before journeys, at the start of planting or harvest, or during periods of drought. Rituals, prayers, and offerings reflected an intimate relationship with the natural world and the divine. Festivals marked seasonal changes or celebrated important deities, providing structure to the year and opportunities for communal gathering. These practices reinforced moral values, social cohesion, and a sense of continuity across generations. Education in desert communities was often informal but rigorous. Children learned survival skills, navigation, trade knowledge, and cultural traditions from elders. Scribes, scholars, and religious leaders played roles in preserving knowledge through writing, oral storytelling, and ceremonial instruction. In cities like Axum and Petra, libraries, inscriptions, and public records ensured that learning extended beyond immediate practical concerns, preserving history, literature, and technical knowledge for future generations. Art and craftsmanship were integral to desert life. Pottery, jewelry, tools, and decorative items were both functional and symbolic. Carvings, murals, and rock art recorded history, spiritual beliefs, and daily activities. These creations allowed individuals to express identity, communicate ideas, and leave enduring marks on their environment. Even in the simplest artifacts, one can trace the ingenuity, aesthetics, and cultural priorities of desert civilizations. Despite the harsh environment, desert societies nurtured strong family structures. Extended families often lived together or in close proximity, pooling resources and responsibilities. Elders were respected for their wisdom and experience, while younger members contributed labor and energy. Social hierarchies were balanced by communal obligations, ensuring survival through cooperation. This integration of family, community, and resource management created resilient societies capable of withstanding environmental and political pressures. Conflict, too, shaped daily life. Protection of water sources, trade routes, and territory often required organized defense. Armies, militias, or tribal coalitions ensured security, while diplomacy and alliances maintained peace. The desert demanded both caution and strategy. Missteps could lead to disaster. Yet within these challenges, societies thrived, developing legal codes, customs, and practices that governed interaction and minimized disruption. And as we immerse ourselves in the daily rhythms of desert civilizations, it becomes clear that their accomplishments were not only monumental in architecture and trade, but also in human adaptability, community, and culture. Every choice, from the design of homes to the planning of trade caravans, reflects a deep understanding of survival and prosperity in extreme conditions. While desert civilizations achieved remarkable feats, their existence was often precarious. Mysterious disappearances and sudden declines are recurring themes in the history of desert kingdoms, leaving archaeologists and historians to piece together clues from ruins, artifacts, and oral traditions. Understanding these events requires examining both human decisions and environmental factors that shaped life in arid regions. Climate played a pivotal role in the fate of desert societies. Extended periods of drought could devastate agriculture, dry up wells, and force communities to migrate. In some cases, once thriving cities were abandoned as water sources disappeared or river courses shifted. For example, the Sabaean kingdom faced environmental challenges that may have contributed to its decline. Despite advanced irrigation techniques and careful water management, prolonged changes in rainfall patterns would have strained resources, creating tension within the population and weakening trade networks. Similarly, the legendary Ubar, often called the Atlantis of the Sands, disappeared in the empty quarter. While legend describes divine punishment, modern research suggests that environmental stress, such as the collapse of underground water channels, may have made survival impossible. What remains are faint traces of foundations and scattered artifacts, reminders that even sophisticated desert civilizations were vulnerable to nature's whims. Trade disruptions also influenced disappearances. Caravans were the lifelines of desert economies, transporting goods, ideas, and wealth across vast distances. When routes shifted due to political changes, conflict, or the discovery of alternate paths, cities that had thrived on commerce could suddenly lose their economic foundation. The Garamantes, for example, relied on trans-Saharan trade. When trade routes altered or weakened, their settlements faced decline, and over time, the desert reclaimed their cities. Archaeology provides crucial insights into these mysteries. Excavations in deserts worldwide reveal patterns of abandonment, resource depletion, and adaptation. In the Sahara, satellite imagery has uncovered ancient riverbeds and city foundations hidden beneath shifting dunes. Similarly, in the Arabian desert, researchers use remote sensing to locate lost settlements and map irrigation systems. Even subtle topographical changes can indicate where civilizations once flourished, offering tangible evidence of human ingenuity and vulnerability. Artifacts tell stories of both daily life and sudden disruption. Pottery left unfinished, tools abandoned mid-task, and personal belongings scattered across sites suggest abrupt departures. Sometimes entire populations moved, leaving behind the physical infrastructure of their homes. Other times, environmental and social pressures slowly eroded communities until only ruins remained. These patterns reveal that disappearances were rarely sudden acts. They were the culmination of multiple stressors, both natural and human-induced. Yet mysteries persist. Some desert civilizations vanish almost without a trace. Oral traditions preserve fragments of their existence, blending history with legend. Stories of hidden cities, treasure-laden ruins, and white cities in the heart of the desert inspire both explorers and researchers, even as definitive evidence remains elusive. The case of Zerzura, the mythical oasis city in the Sahara, exemplifies this intersection of legend and archaeology. Sightings over centuries have fueled speculation, but concrete proof remains limited, emphasizing the desert's role as both preserver and concealer of history. Environmental adaptation was often key to survival. Communities built water channels, cisterns, and dams, reflecting sophisticated engineering skills. The Nabateans carved reservoirs into rock to capture rainwater, while the Garamantes constructed fogaras, underground tunnels transporting water over long distances. These innovations allowed settlements to endure for centuries, but when environmental conditions changed beyond what technology could mitigate, decline became inevitable. The desert also influenced societal organization. Resource scarcity demanded cooperation, strategic planning, and sometimes centralized authority. Leaders coordinated labor for irrigation, defense, and trade. Communities developed laws, customs, and rituals that regulated resource use, social behavior, and conflict resolution. Disruption of these structures, whether through environmental stress or external invasion, could precipitate decline, demonstrating how interwoven human society and natural conditions were in desert civilizations. Despite their disappearance, the legacy of these civilizations remains. Archaeological sites, inscriptions, rock art, and oral traditions provide glimpses into a world of resilience, creativity, and adaptation. Modern technology continues to uncover hidden cities, ancient roads, and irrigation systems, gradually revealing the scope and complexity of societies that once thrived in the sands. Each discovery adds to our understanding, highlighting human ingenuity in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. The stories of vanished desert civilizations remind us of the delicate balance between survival and collapse. They demonstrate how human innovation, leadership, and culture can flourish even under extreme conditions, yet also how quickly a combination of environmental and social pressures can unravel centuries of achievement. Beyond their cities and trade networks, desert civilizations are famed for their hidden treasures, lost temples, and spiritual practices. While the harsh environment demanded practical survival skills, it also fostered rich cultural and religious life. Temples, shrines, and sacred spaces were scattered across deserts, often in locations that were difficult to reach, reflecting both reverence and strategic placement to safeguard sacred knowledge. The Nabateans, for instance, carved intricate temples into the cliffs of Petra. These sanctuaries were not merely decorative, they served as centers of worship, governance, and social gathering. Rituals conducted within these rock-hewn halls invoked protection, fertility, and prosperity. Priests and religious officials maintained calendars of ceremonies, performed sacrifices, and guided the population in moral and spiritual matters. The precise alignment of some temples with the sun or stars suggests a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, showing that spirituality and scientific observation often intersected. Similarly, in the deserts of Arabia, the Sabaeans constructed elaborate temples to honor deities associated with agriculture, water, and the sun. Offerings of incense, precious metals, and livestock were common, demonstrating the intertwined nature of wealth, religion, and survival. Sacred sites often became hubs for festivals, where communities gathered to celebrate seasonal cycles, pray for rainfall, and reinforce social bonds. These ceremonies were essential for both spiritual and practical reasons, as they strengthened communal cohesion in challenging environments. Hidden treasures were not limited to religious artifacts. Desert civilizations often stored wealth, gold, silver, spices, and luxury goods in secure locations, sometimes buried or concealed in remote areas. Caravan routes and oasis towns were dotted with storerooms and caches designed to protect goods from bandits and harsh conditions. Many of these treasures remain undiscovered, their locations lost to time, sand, and legend. Explorers and archaeologists continue to search for such caches, driven by curiosity, history, and the allure of uncovering ancient riches. Some desert civilizations incorporated spiritual symbolism into their material culture. Jewelry, pottery, and tools often bore inscriptions, motifs, or designs representing gods, celestial bodies, or natural forces. These items were not merely functional. They conveyed identity, spiritual beliefs, and social status. Through them, archaeologists can reconstruct aspects of daily life, religious practice, and cultural values. Even in mundane artifacts, one can see the profound connection between the desert, spirituality, and human creativity. Lost temples and sacred sites also hold the stories of migration, conquest, and cultural exchange. As trade routes expanded, desert civilizations came into contact with distant cultures, adopting and adapting practices, architectural styles, and religious ideas. Temples might incorporate symbols or deities from foreign lands, reflecting both cosmopolitan influence and local adaptation. These intersections of culture highlight the desert as a conduit for human interaction, creativity, and spiritual evolution. The deserts of North Africa provide striking examples. Rock art in the Sahara, some dating back over 6,000 years, depicts ritual scenes, animals, and human figures. These carvings, often located in remote areas, suggest that the desert was not merely a place of survival, but also a canvas for storytelling, spiritual expression, and recording history. Such sites offer a rare window into the beliefs and practices of communities long vanished, bridging the gap between archaeology and imagination. Similarly, in the Atacama and Namib deserts, remnants of temples, ceremonial grounds, and burial sites indicate societies deeply engaged with their environment and the cosmos. The positioning of structures, alignment with celestial events, and the careful preservation of ritual spaces all point to a sophisticated understanding of the natural and spiritual worlds. These sacred sites served as anchors for culture, identity, and continuity, even amid environmental challenges and social change. Many hidden treasures remain shrouded in mystery. Legends speak of gold, incense, and sacred artifacts buried in remote valleys, caves, or beneath sand dunes. While some of these treasures have been discovered, many more may lie undisturbed, preserved by the desert for centuries. The allure of discovery continues to captivate explorers, archaeologists, and storytellers, keeping the mysteries of desert civilizations alive in modern imagination. Spirituality, treasure, and culture were inseparable in desert civilizations. Temples and sacred spaces anchored communities, while hidden treasures ensured survival and economic stability. Together, they created a multi-dimensional society in which practicality, belief, and aesthetics coexisted. Even in ruins, these elements tell the story of human ingenuity, faith, and adaptability in one of Earth's harshest environments. One of the most remarkable aspects of desert civilizations is their architecture and engineering, which reflect both practicality and ingenuity. Building in the desert required solutions to extreme heat, scarce water, shifting sands, and isolation. And yet these societies produced structures that were not only functional, but often breathtakingly beautiful. The city of Petra provides one of the most iconic examples. Carved directly into rose-red cliffs, Petra's facades, tombs, and temples demonstrate incredible craftsmanship and planning. Engineers designed water channels, cisterns, and reservoirs to collect and store rainwater, ensuring the city's survival in an arid environment. Streets were laid out to facilitate trade and movement, while monumental gates and tombs reflected both spiritual beliefs and social hierarchy. Every aspect of the city, from its placement to its details, was carefully calculated to harmonize with the natural landscape. Similarly, the fortresses of the Sabaeans in Yemen were strategically positioned on hilltops and cliffs. These locations provided defense against invaders and oversight of surrounding valleys and trade routes. Walls were thick and often reinforced with locally sourced stone, while towers allowed early detection of approaching threats. Fortifications were integrated into urban planning, showing that desert societies combined military foresight with architectural sophistication. Water management remained central to desert engineering. In the Garamantes kingdom of the Sahara, underground fogaras, long tunnels carrying water from distant aquifers, sustained agriculture and settlements in the middle of an unforgiving desert. These tunnels required careful planning, engineering knowledge, and labor coordination. By controlling scarce water resources, the Garamantes created fertile oases that supported not only crops, but also social and economic life. Urban planning in desert civilizations reflected both environmental adaptation and social structure. Streets, marketplaces, and public spaces were designed to maximize shade, airflow, and accessibility. Residential areas often clustered around courtyards, providing shelter from sun and sand while creating communal spaces for social interaction. These layouts were not random. They demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of climate, resource management, and human behavior. Religious and ceremonial structures were also integrated into city planning. Temples, shrines, and sacred monuments were often located on high points, near water sources, or along trade routes. Their placement reinforced spiritual significance and provided practical benefits, such as visibility, security, and accessibility. Rituals and festivals, which were central to community life, were supported by the careful design of plazas, open spaces, and processional routes. Even smaller settlements displayed architectural ingenuity. Homes built from mud bricks or stone-incorporated features to regulate temperature, conserve water, and withstand sandstorms. Roofs served multiple functions: drying crops, observing the surrounding landscape, or catching dew and rainfall. Courtyards allowed for ventilation and social activity, while storage areas preserved food, water, and valuable items. In these ways, architecture reflected not only survival needs, but also cultural values and aesthetic sensibilities. Trade hubs in the desert combined practical infrastructure with impressive design. Caravanserais, inns for travelers and merchants, were strategically placed along trade routes, providing shelter, water, and security. These structures facilitated commerce, encouraged cultural exchange, and became centers of information. Markets were often enclosed, with shaded areas and storage facilities to protect goods from the harsh desert climate. The careful layout of these spaces ensured that trade could flourish even in the most challenging environments. The alignment of structures with natural features and celestial events was another hallmark of desert architecture. Temples, tombs, and monuments often reflected astronomical knowledge, with orientations marking solstices, equinoxes, or lunar cycles. This integration of science, spirituality, and design highlights the sophistication of desert civilizations, where survival, belief, and aesthetics were inseparable. Even after centuries, many of these architectural marvels continue to inspire awe. The precision of stonework, the ingenuity of water systems, and the aesthetic harmony with the environment reveal societies that mastered not only survival, but also cultural expression. Through ruins, inscriptions, and archaeological analysis, we gain insight into how these civilizations balanced human needs, environmental challenges, and spiritual aspirations. Survival in the desert was not only a matter of resources and trade, it also depended heavily on military strategy and defense. The harsh environment shaped the way kingdoms approached warfare, requiring ingenuity, mobility, and adaptability. Desert civilizations developed unique military systems to protect their cities, trade routes, and people, reflecting both the challenges of the landscape and the sophistication of their societies. The Nabateans offer a compelling example. Petra's natural geography, a maze of cliffs, narrow canyons, and hidden passes, provided inherent defense. Engineers and military strategists enhanced these natural advantages by constructing walls, gates, and lookout points. Caravans could be protected along treacherous routes with armed escorts, and ambushes could be planned using the landscape itself. Mobility and knowledge of the terrain were critical, as unfamiliar armies often found themselves trapped or misled by the desert's deceptive expanses. In North Africa, the Garamantes developed cavalry-based armies capable of traversing vast desert distances. Mounted warriors patrolled trade routes, defended settlements, and engaged in raids when necessary. The ability to move quickly across shifting sands gave them a strategic advantage, enabling both defense and offense over large territories. Fortifications, combined with mobile forces, allowed these kingdoms to maintain control over resources and population centers, even in harsh conditions. Desert fortresses were not merely military installations, they were integrated into urban and economic life. Strongholds often contained storerooms for food and water, living quarters for soldiers, and communication systems to alert surrounding communities. Towers and elevated platforms allowed early detection of threats, while walls and gates were designed to channel invaders into defensible positions. Strategic placement of forts near trade routes and water sources ensured both protection and the ability to exert influence over commerce. Tactics in desert warfare were influenced by environmental realities. Heat, sandstorms, and limited water supplies could dictate the timing and strategy of campaigns. Armies needed careful planning to avoid exhaustion or resource depletion, and knowledge of the terrain was invaluable. Guerrilla-style tactics, ambushes, and rapid strikes often proved more effective than prolonged engagements in open desert spaces. Leadership required both courage and intimate understanding of the desert's challenges. In Arabia, the Sabaeans utilized fortifications, trenches, and elevated platforms to defend their kingdoms. These defensive systems protected vital irrigation networks, storage facilities, and cities from both raiders and rival states. Strategic alliances with neighboring tribes were also a key element of military planning, combining diplomacy with martial strength to maintain stability. Such measures reflect the integration of military strategy into broader governance and societal organization. Trade caravans were often a target in desert regions, and protecting them required both innovation and coordination. Merchants frequently traveled in convoys with armed guards, using intelligence networks to anticipate bandit activity or hostile forces. Desert kingdoms sometimes established relay posts or fortified way stations, providing security, supplies, and information. These measures not only safeguarded economic interests, but also reinforced political influence across vast, sparsely populated regions. Weapons and military technology were adapted to desert conditions. Light, mobile armor allowed soldiers to endure heat while maintaining agility. Bows, javelins, and short swords were common, enabling fast strikes and flexibility. Camels and horses were essential for mobility, serving as both transportation and instruments of warfare. Siege tactics, while less common in open desert, were employed when targeting fortified settlements or rival cities, demonstrating versatility and strategic thinking. Even spiritual beliefs influenced military conduct. Many desert civilizations invoked divine protection before battles, offered sacrifices to ensure victory, or held rituals to honor fallen warriors. Temples and sacred sites often became rallying points, reinforcing morale and social cohesion. Leaders used both practical and symbolic measures to inspire loyalty and courage, demonstrating how culture, religion, and military life were intertwined. Ultimately, desert warfare was a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. Societies that mastered strategy, fortification, and mobility could thrive despite the harsh environment. Conversely, those that failed to adapt often faced decline or annihilation, leaving ruins and legends as reminders of the desert's unforgiving nature. These military practices reveal not only the physical challenges of the landscape, but also the intellectual and organizational sophistication of desert civilizations. Beyond trade, architecture, and warfare, the religion and festivals of desert civilizations played a central role in shaping society. In harsh environments where survival depended on cooperation, ritual, and belief, spiritual practices provided structure, meaning, and cohesion. They guided daily life, influenced governance, and offered a sense of connection to forces beyond human control. The Nabateans incorporated religion into every aspect of their urban life. Temples were carved into cliffs not only as places of worship, but also as centers of education, governance, and social interaction. Deities representing fertility, protection, and trade were honored with offerings and rituals. Festivals marked seasonal changes, the passage of the sun and stars, and significant agricultural or trade events. Music, poetry, and ceremonial dances accompanied these celebrations, reinforcing social bonds and cultural identity. Similarly, in Arabia, the Sabaeans held elaborate festivals that combined religious devotion with community participation. Incense and spices were used in ritual offerings, while priests conducted ceremonies to ensure the favor of the gods for rainfall, abundant harvests, and the safety of caravans. These gatherings were more than spiritual events. They were crucial moments for reinforcing alliances, exchanging news, and fostering economic cooperation. In desert environments, where survival could hinge on communal effort, religious festivals served as social glue. Desert religion often reflected the environment itself. Gods and spirits were associated with natural elements such as rivers, oases, the sun, and celestial bodies. Rituals might involve invoking divine protection over water sources or blessings on agricultural fields. Sacred sites were carefully chosen, often located near natural springs, elevated terrain, or hidden valleys, reinforcing the belief that humans were intimately connected to the forces shaping their world. Symbolism permeated art, architecture, and daily objects. Pottery, jewelry, and tools frequently bore motifs representing deities, stars, or mythological scenes. Temples and monuments were aligned with solar or lunar cycles, demonstrating sophisticated astronomical knowledge combined with spiritual practice. Even in functional items, symbolism reinforced social hierarchy, religious beliefs, and cultural identity, weaving spirituality seamlessly into everyday life. Sacred rituals were also linked to trade and diplomacy. Desert kingdoms recognized that successful commerce often depended on divine favor, and merchants might participate in temple ceremonies before embarking on long journeys. Offerings and prayers were intended not only to protect goods, but also to secure safe passage, strengthen alliances, and maintain social order. The intertwining of spirituality, economy, and governance underscores the holistic worldview of desert civilizations. Festivals themselves were dynamic events involving feasting, storytelling, music, and performance. They celebrated seasonal cycles, historical victories, or mythological narratives, fostering a shared cultural memory. These occasions also allowed artisans, performers, and storytellers to showcase their skills, passing knowledge and tradition to younger generations. Through celebration, communities strengthened identity, cohesion, and resilience, a necessity in challenging environments. The spiritual life of desert civilizations extended to death and the afterlife. Burial practices, tomb construction, and funerary rituals reflected beliefs about life beyond death. Elaborate tombs, such as those in Petra, combined artistry, architecture, and spiritual symbolism, ensuring that ancestors remained honored and remembered. These practices reinforced social hierarchy, transmitted cultural values, and maintained continuity across generations. Even in decline, spiritual practices left enduring legacies. Temples, artifacts, and inscriptions provide insights into beliefs, moral codes, and societal priorities. Oral traditions, myths, and legends preserved knowledge long after cities were abandoned. These stories continue to inspire exploration and research, offering glimpses into the worldview of people who thrived amid the desert's challenges. Ultimately, religion and festivals were more than ritual. They were a reflection of human adaptability, creativity, and social organization. They provided structure, reinforced cohesion, and enriched daily life, allowing civilizations to flourish despite environmental hardships. By studying these spiritual practices, we gain insight into the values, priorities, and ingenuity of societies that might otherwise be forgotten. Another captivating aspect of desert civilizations is their art, craftsmanship, and material culture. While survival was paramount, these societies also cultivated beauty, symbolism, and expression, embedding their identity and beliefs into objects, architecture, and everyday items. Art was both functional and symbolic, reflecting the ingenuity and values of communities shaped by the harsh desert environment. In Petra, the Nabateans produced sculptures, carvings, and monumental facades that remain breathtaking to this day. Every detail, from the precision of rock-cut tombs to decorative motifs on columns and walls, reveals mastery of both engineering and artistry. Symbols depicting gods, celestial bodies, and mythological scenes conveyed religious, cultural, and social significance. These artistic expressions were not merely ornamental. They served to communicate hierarchy, divine favor, and cultural identity to residents and travelers alike. Textiles and jewelry were equally significant. Women and artisans wove intricate patterns into clothing, using dyes derived from plants, minerals, and insects. Each design carried meaning, social status, tribal affiliation, or spiritual symbolism. Jewelry, crafted from gold, silver, or semi-precious stones, functioned both as adornment and as a marker of wealth and prestige. Even the smallest objects often bore signs, inscriptions, or motifs that reflected belief systems or cultural narratives. Pottery was both utilitarian and artistic. Desert communities produced vessels for storing water, grains, and other essentials, decorating them with geometric patterns, animal motifs, or religious symbols. The combination of practicality and beauty demonstrates a culture where daily life, spirituality, and artistic expression were intertwined. Pottery also provides archaeologists with invaluable insights into trade, technology, and social customs, as designs often reveal influences from distant regions. Rock art across desert landscapes is another testimony to creativity. In North Africa and Arabia, petroglyphs and carvings depict hunting scenes, ritual ceremonies, animals, and celestial symbols. These works, often in remote locations, suggest that art was deeply integrated into spiritual and communal life. The depictions also provide a record of the environment, social interactions, and cultural values, offering a rare window into the worldview of people whose cities and settlements may have long vanished. Metalwork was advanced in many desert civilizations. Weapons, tools, and ceremonial items were forged with skill, sometimes inlaid with gold or silver. Artisans mastered techniques to shape metal under extreme conditions, producing objects that were both functional and symbolic. Trade facilitated the introduction of foreign materials and techniques, leading to hybrid styles that reflect the interconnectedness of desert kingdoms with other regions. Even architecture served as a medium for artistic expression. Carved facades, decorative columns, and elaborately designed tombs and temples conveyed cultural narratives, spiritual devotion, and social hierarchy. The interplay of form, function, and symbolism is evident in every structure, demonstrating that desert civilizations valued not only survival, but also aesthetic achievement. Material culture also reinforced social cohesion. Shared artistic traditions, ritual objects, and ceremonial tools promoted communal identity and continuity across generations. Artisans were respected for their skills, and craftsmanship was often linked to spiritual or ceremonial duties. By creating objects that were both useful and meaningful, desert societies cultivated a sense of permanence, beauty, and collective memory, even in the face of environmental challenges. Trade further amplified artistic expression. Caravans transported luxury goods, exotic materials, and artistic techniques across deserts, facilitating cross-cultural influence. Objects found in desert settlements often reveal a mix of local innovation and foreign inspiration, illustrating the dynamic exchange of ideas and styles. Through art and craft, desert civilizations connected with the wider world, extending their cultural impact far beyond their immediate surroundings. The resilience and creativity expressed in desert art and material culture remind us that these societies were sophisticated, imaginative, and deeply aware of their environment. They combined survival, spirituality, and beauty in ways that continue to inspire awe and curiosity today. Every artifact, carving, and textile tells a story of human adaptability, skill, and cultural identity, preserved across millennia in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. A cornerstone of desert civilizations was their trade hubs and marketplaces, which served as lifelines for both commerce and cultural exchange. In harsh environments where resources were scarce, marketplaces became vital centers of interaction, connecting distant communities and enabling the flow of goods, ideas, and traditions across vast desert expanses. The city of Petra was more than a marvel of architecture. It was a thriving trade hub. Merchants from Arabia, Africa, and the Mediterranean converged to exchange spices, textiles, precious metals, and luxury items. Markets bustled with activity, with traders calling out prices, haggling over goods, and displaying wares in stalls shaded from the desert sun. These marketplaces were also social and cultural centers, where news, stories, and knowledge were shared alongside commerce. Caravanserais, fortified inns scattered along desert trade routes, played a critical role in this economic network. Travelers and merchants could rest, resupply, and exchange information, making long journeys feasible. These hubs facilitated not only trade, but also the dissemination of ideas, technology, and culture. They were instrumental in sustaining economic stability, connecting remote settlements, and fostering communication across deserts that might otherwise have remained isolated. The incense route exemplifies the interdependence of desert trade networks. Frankincense, myrrh, spices, and other commodities traveled from southern Arabia to the Mediterranean, passing through kingdoms that carefully regulated and protected the flow of goods. Control of key oases and caravan routes allowed certain civilizations to amass wealth and influence. Merchants and rulers alike understood that commerce was inseparable from security, diplomacy, and environmental management. Markets themselves were often highly organized. Goods were sorted by type, and traders specialized in particular commodities, such as textiles, metals, or foodstuffs. Standards for measurement, currency, and quality were maintained to ensure fairness and efficiency. Social interactions in markets also reinforced cultural norms, hierarchy, and community ties. Festivals and public gatherings often coincided with trade events, blending economy and culture in a seamless way. Trade in desert civilizations was not only about material goods, it was also a conduit for knowledge and innovation. Merchants carried ideas about astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and art across regions. Scientific techniques, artistic motifs, and technological innovations spread along trade routes, enriching communities far from their place of origin. This flow of knowledge was as vital to civilization as the goods themselves, demonstrating the intellectual dimension of desert commerce. Security was a critical concern. Desert caravans were vulnerable to bandits, harsh weather, and resource scarcity. Fortified posts, armed escorts, and relay networks were established to mitigate these risks. Merchants developed strategies for timing departures, planning routes, and coordinating with the local authorities. Desert kingdoms invested in infrastructure, protection, and diplomacy to ensure that trade remained profitable and sustainable. Trade hubs also reflected social hierarchy and wealth. Certain marketplaces were reserved for elite merchants or goods of high value, while others catered to local communities. Currency, taxation, and tariffs were carefully managed, linking economic activity to political authority. Control of marketplaces reinforced the power of rulers and the cohesion of societies, demonstrating the interplay between commerce and governance in desert civilizations. The legacy of these trade networks is still evident today. Archaeological discoveries reveal roads, caravanserais, and remnants of marketplaces, highlighting the sophistication of ancient economic systems. Artifacts from distant lands demonstrate the reach and influence of desert commerce, while inscriptions and records provide insight into trade regulations, agreements, and cultural exchanges. These discoveries remind us that deserts were not barren wastelands but vibrant corridors of human interaction. Ultimately, desert trade hubs exemplify the ingenuity, resilience, and interconnectedness of ancient civilizations. They transformed harsh landscapes into thriving centers of economy, culture, and social life, illustrating how human societies adapt and flourish even in extreme conditions. Equally vital to the story of desert civilizations are the nomadic peoples, whose mobility, resilience, and deep understanding of the environment shaped both culture and commerce. Nomads moved across vast desert expanses, navigating harsh landscapes, managing scarce resources, and connecting distant settlements through trade, alliances, and knowledge exchange. The life of a desert nomad was defined by adaptability. Families traveled with herds of camels, goats, or sheep, following seasonal patterns to access grazing lands, water sources, and safe routes. Mobility was not only a survival strategy, it was a cultural identity, fostering independence, resourcefulness, and intimate knowledge of the desert's challenges. Nomadic groups developed complex systems for sharing resources, resolving conflicts, and ensuring cohesion within their communities. Trade was central to nomadic influence. Nomads acted as intermediaries between urban centers and remote regions, transporting goods such as spices, textiles, and metals across vast distances. Their expertise in navigation and survival allowed them to traverse areas that sedentary populations could not reach. Caravan routes often relied on nomadic guides who understood the desert's dangers, the location of hidden water sources, and safe passages. Without these mobile networks, desert commerce would have been far more limited and perilous. Nomadic culture was rich in oral tradition. Stories, songs, and poetry preserved history, values, and practical knowledge. Tales of ancestors, heroic deeds, and sacred landscapes were passed down through generations, ensuring continuity even in societies without permanent settlements. Storytelling also reinforced communal identity, moral codes, and cultural memory, making nomadic communities custodians of both tangible and intangible heritage. Social organization among nomads was flexible yet structured. Leadership often depended on experience, wisdom, and skill rather than rigid hierarchy. Tribal elders or councils mediated disputes, coordinated resource use, and guided collective decisions. Such governance allowed groups to remain adaptable while maintaining cohesion, ensuring survival in an unpredictable environment. Religious and spiritual practices were integral to nomadic life. Ceremonies often marked seasonal movements, the birth or death of livestock, or significant family events. Sacred sites, often near springs, oases, or mountains, were visited during pilgrimages or important rituals. These practices reinforced the nomads' connection to the land, the natural forces that sustained them, and the broader cultural and spiritual world. Nomads also influenced sedentary civilizations. Their knowledge of the desert facilitated trade, exploration, and military strategy. They provided guidance on water sources, safe routes, and terrain, and sometimes acted as mercenaries or allies in conflicts. Cultural exchanges were common. Nomadic groups absorbed aspects of urban life while imparting their own traditions, artistic motifs, and practical knowledge to settled populations. Survival strategies were remarkable. Nomads mastered the use of camels for transport, milk, and even protection. They constructed portable shelters that could be easily packed and moved, ensuring comfort and security during long migrations. Water conservation techniques, foraging skills, and adaptive clothing allowed them to endure extreme temperatures and sandstorms. These skills not only ensured survival, but also contributed to the resilience of entire trade networks and desert societies. Despite their mobility, nomads maintained strong cultural continuity. Family bonds, tribal identity, and collective knowledge were preserved across generations. Skills in navigation, animal husbandry, and negotiation were taught from childhood, ensuring that each generation could thrive in an unforgiving environment. Nomads were both custodians and innovators, bridging past and present, tradition and adaptation. The impact of nomadic communities on desert civilizations cannot be overstated. They connected cities, facilitated trade, preserved culture, and contributed to the survival of both people and knowledge across vast, harsh landscapes. Their mobility and adaptability turned the desert from a barrier into a conduit for human interaction, commerce, and cultural exchange. A cornerstone of desert civilization survival was agriculture and water management. In arid environments, farming required ingenuity, careful planning, and technological innovation. Without these systems, urban centers, trade hubs, and nomadic networks would have struggled to endure the relentless heat and scarcity of resources. The Nabateans perfected water collection and distribution systems in Petra, demonstrating remarkable engineering skill. Rainwater was captured in channels, stored in cisterns, and distributed through aqueducts to gardens, homes, and public spaces. This meticulous management allowed for the cultivation of crops, supporting both the population and trade. Crops such as barley, wheat, dates, and figs thrived in carefully irrigated plots, demonstrating how ancient civilizations could turn even the harshest environments into productive landscapes. Similarly, the Garamantes in the Sahara constructed underground channels called fogaras. These tunnels tapped into distant aquifers, delivering water to arid oases where agriculture could flourish. Maintaining these structures required coordinated labor, knowledge of hydrology, and long-term planning. The system not only supported local settlements, but also ensured that trade caravans had reliable water sources along desert routes. Such innovations highlight the sophisticated engineering and foresight of desert societies. Oases served as crucial agricultural centers. They provided water, fertile soil, and shelter from the elements, allowing for crop cultivation, animal husbandry, and human settlement. Communities around oases often became vibrant cultural and economic hubs, linking nomads and urban centers. The careful management of these resources was critical, as overuse or mismanagement could lead to scarcity, conflict, or migration. Crop selection and cultivation methods reflected adaptation to extreme conditions. Drought-resistant varieties, Strategic planting schedules and soil conservation techniques ensured maximum yield. Terracing, mulching, and the use of natural fertilizers helped maintain soil fertility and reduce water loss. Agriculture was a combination of science, observation, and practical experience, demonstrating the intimate knowledge desert civilizations had of their environment. Trade and agriculture were closely intertwined. Surplus crops were traded along desert routes, while imported goods such as spices, dyes, and tools supplemented local production. Marketplaces thrived because agricultural innovation allowed for surplus and specialization. This synergy between farming and commerce sustained civilizations, demonstrating the interconnectedness of economic, technological, and social systems in desert environments. Irrigation also played a ceremonial and social role. Some systems were linked to religious practices, with offerings made to ensure abundant rainfall or protection from drought. Maintenance of canals and reservoirs required communal effort, fostering social cohesion and shared responsibility. These practices reinforced cultural values while addressing practical necessities, highlighting how survival and spirituality were interwoven in desert societies. Animal husbandry complemented agriculture. Camels, goats, and sheep provided milk, meat, hides, and labor, while also serving as trade commodities. Nomads and settled populations developed techniques for breeding, herding, and feeding animals in arid landscapes. Pasture management, rotational grazing, and water conservation ensured that livestock remained a sustainable resource even in extreme conditions. The ingenuity of desert agriculture also extended to storage and preservation. Granaries, silos, and storage pits protected crops from pests, spoilage, and theft. Techniques such as sun-drying, fermenting, and salting allowed communities to maintain food supplies year-round. This foresight and resourcefulness contributed to the resilience and longevity of desert civilizations, allowing them to thrive despite environmental unpredictability. Ultimately, agriculture and water management were more than survival tools. They were symbols of human ingenuity, adaptability, and cooperation. These systems allowed civilizations to flourish in conditions that might otherwise have been inhospitable, demonstrating the creativity, organization, and foresight that defined desert life. As we reach the conclusion of our journey, it is important to reflect on the legacies and enduring impact of desert civilizations. Though many cities have been reclaimed by sand and countless stories were lost to time, the ingenuity, culture, and resilience of these societies continue to inspire and inform the modern world. One of the most lasting legacies lies in engineering and urban planning. The sophisticated water systems of Petra, the fogaras of the Sahara, and the fortified cities of Arabia demonstrate human creativity in overcoming environmental challenges. Modern engineers and architects study these ancient methods to understand sustainable practices in arid regions. The careful integration of natural resources, infrastructure, and community needs provides lessons that remain relevant today. Cultural and spiritual heritage is another profound legacy. Temples, inscriptions, pottery, and rock art preserve the beliefs, rituals, and values of civilizations that thrived in some of the harshest landscapes on Earth. These artifacts are not merely historical curiosities. They are touchstones for understanding human creativity, moral systems, and community organization. Festivals, storytelling, and oral traditions ensured that even transient communities left enduring marks on culture and memory. Trade and economic networks also left a lasting impact. Desert civilizations connected distant regions, enabling the flow of goods, ideas, and technologies. Routes like the incense route or the trade networks of Petra facilitated global exchange centuries before modern transportation. These networks fostered cross-cultural interactions, spreading innovations in art, science, and craftsmanship, shaping the development of civilizations far beyond the desert's boundaries. The resilience of nomadic communities offers valuable lessons in adaptability and sustainability. Their mobility, resourcefulness, and knowledge of the environment ensured survival in extreme conditions. They preserved culture, guided trade, and influenced sedentary societies, demonstrating that human ingenuity is not confined to cities or empires, but can thrive in harmony with nature. Even the stories of decline and disappearance carry wisdom. Environmental stress, resource mismanagement, and social upheaval contributed to the fall of many desert kingdoms. Studying these declines reminds us of the delicate balance between human activity and natural conditions. It highlights the importance of planning, cooperation, and respect for ecological limits. A lesson as relevant today as it was millennia ago. Art, craft, and architecture remain enduring symbols of desert civilization. From monumental facades carved into cliffs to intricately woven textiles, every artifact tells a story of creativity, spirituality, and human adaptation. Modern archaeologists, historians, and travelers continue to be inspired by these achievements, drawing insight into the minds, values, and lives of people who lived long before modern technology. Education and knowledge preservation were also central legacies. Scribes, scholars, and oral traditions ensured that scientific, cultural, and spiritual understanding was passed down. The combination of practical skills, artistic expression, and intellectual inquiry shaped societies capable of surviving, innovating, and thriving in extreme environments. The lessons embedded in these practices continue to inform contemporary understanding of history, culture, and human resilience. Ultimately, the deserts were not barriers. They were crucibles of innovation, culture, and human ingenuity. Every surviving city, artifact, and story is a testament to the perseverance, creativity, and adaptability of civilizations that mastered survival in extreme conditions. Their legacies endure not only in physical remnants, but also in the lessons they offer about community, resourcefulness, and the interplay between humans and their environment. The deserts were not only home to bustling trade hubs, ingenious engineering, and resilient peoples, they were also landscapes of myths and legends. For those who lived among the sands, the desert was more than geography. It was alive with spirits, haunted ruins, and sacred places. Many of these tales shaped identity, guided moral codes, and gave meaning to survival in such a harsh environment. One of the most enduring legends is that of Ubar, the Atlantis of the sands. Said to be a city of immense wealth, Ubar was believed to have been punished by divine wrath for arrogance and corruption. Ancient travelers spoke of its grand markets, adorned with gold and precious stones, and its towers that touched the heavens. But one night, the city is said to have been swallowed by the desert, disappearing beneath dunes. For centuries, explorers sought Ubar, and though ruins have been discovered in omen that may align with the tale, the mystery remains a captivating blend of fact and folklore. The Bedouin nomads told stories of spirits known as jinn, creatures of fire and air who roamed unseen across the sands. Some were tricksters, others protectors, but all were to be respected. Travelers would leave offerings at crossroads or whisper prayers before entering unknown territories, hoping to appease the jinn. These tales explained sudden sandstorms, strange sounds at night, or the disappearance of travelers. For desert peoples, jinn symbolized the unseen power of the wilderness, unpredictable, dangerous, yet awe-inspiring. In the Sahara, legends spoke of hidden wells guarded by spirits. Only those deemed worthy could find them, while the greedy or careless would wander endlessly, never quenching their thirst. These stories were more than entertainment. They served as moral lessons about humility, respect, and the fragile balance of life in the desert. The Nabateans, who carved Petra into rose-red cliffs, believed their city was under the protection of divine beings. According to local lore, the treasury facade, one of Petra's most iconic monuments, was said to hide a magical urn containing endless riches. Some claimed it was a gift from the gods, others whispered it held curses for those who dared disturb it. To this day, bullet marks can be seen on the urn, fired by treasure seekers who hoped to release its supposed wealth. In Arabian traditions, the desert was also home to ghouls, monstrous beings who lured weary travelers into desolation. These creatures, often depicted as shapeshifters, served as warnings to avoid straying from safe paths or succumbing to temptation. Their presence in folklore reflected the real dangers of the desert: dehydration, disorientation, and exhaustion. The ghoul embodied the perils of wandering too far without preparation or respect for the land. Legends often merged with astronomy. The vast desert sky, unobstructed by trees or cities, became a canvas for imagination. Constellations were given stories that guided travelers and reinforced cultural values. Tales of hunters, lovers, and gods painted the night sky, transforming navigation into spiritual connection. For nomads, the stars were both compass and scripture, linking the heavens to earthly survival. The Oracle of Siwa Oasis in Egypt's western desert held legendary significance. Pilgrims, including Alexander the Great, sought its wisdom, believing the oasis was touched by divine presence. Local myths described the waters as sacred, capable of granting visions or revealing destinies. These beliefs elevated Siwa from a remote settlement to a place of pilgrimage, demonstrating how legend could shape history. Even ruins carried mythic weight. Abandoned cities, eroded by time and sand, were often seen not merely as relics, but as cursed places. People believed the desert itself had swallowed them for reasons: greed, pride, or impiety. These narratives preserved moral lessons and instilled reverence for forgotten civilizations. Each ruin was a silent teacher, reminding survivors of the fragility of power and the need for humility before nature and the divine. In these myths, one theme remains constant. The desert was never empty. It was a stage where gods, spirits, and unseen forces dwelled alongside humans. Legends gave meaning to hardship, transformed fear into caution, and turned survival into a sacred act. They also ensured that knowledge, values, and warnings were passed down through generations, weaving culture into the very fabric of the sands. Beyond myths and legends, the true heartbeat of desert civilizations lay in the daily rituals of life. The rhythms of work, food, family, and clothing that sustained entire communities. These seemingly ordinary practices carried deep meaning, reflecting both survival strategies and cultural identity. Food and diet. The diet of desert peoples was simple yet resourceful. Grains like barley and wheat formed the foundation, ground into flour and baked into flatbreads that could be carried during long journeys. Dates, abundant in oases, were a staple, nutritious, long-lasting, and versatile. They were eaten fresh, dried, or turned into syrup. Milk from camels and goats provided essential nutrition, while meat was consumed sparingly, often reserved for festivals or important gatherings. Cooking was done with minimal resources. Clay ovens, portable braziers, and open fires fueled by scrub wood or dried dung were common. Herbs like thyme, cumin, and coriander-flavored dishes, while salt, precious and often traded across vast routes, was treasured not just for taste, but for preservation. Meals were communal, reinforcing family and tribal bonds, and often accompanied by storytelling, poetry, or prayer. Clothing and adornment. Clothing in desert societies was both practical and symbolic. Loose flowing garments allowed air to circulate and protected the body from the burning sun by covering the skin. Cotton and wool were common, dyed with natural pigments derived from plants, minerals, or insects. Veils and head coverings shielded faces from sun and sand, while sandals made of leather or woven fiber provided protection against scorching ground. Adornment carried social and cultural significance. Jewelry crafted from silver, beads, or shells indicated wealth, marital status, or tribal affiliation. Henna, used to decorate hands and feet, marked celebrations such as weddings or festivals. These personal expressions connected individuals to both tradition and beauty, blending practicality with identity. Family and community life. Family was the cornerstone of desert society. Extended households lived together, sharing responsibilities for food, herding, and child-rearing. Elders provided wisdom and mediated disputes, while younger members contributed labor and ensured continuity. Marriage was often arranged within tribes, reinforcing alliances and strengthening communal ties. Children were taught survival skills from an early age. Boys learned herding, navigation, and trade, while girls mastered cooking, weaving, and managing household resources. Oral tradition was central. Grandparents recited stories, songs, and proverbs that passed down knowledge and reinforced cultural values. In this way, each generation carried the wisdom of its ancestors, ensuring resilience in an unforgiving environment. Daily rituals and spiritual practices. Life in the desert was deeply spiritual. Morning prayers or offerings to protective spirits often began the day, seeking blessings for safe travel, abundant harvests, or good health. Rituals were woven into daily tasks. whispering thanks while drawing water, reciting verses before a journey, or pausing to mark the rising of constellations at night. Festivals provided relief from routine. These occasions combined music, dance, feasting, and rituals to honor gods, ancestors, or natural cycles. Such gatherings reinforced community identity, offered opportunities for trade, and provided moments of joy and renewal amid the challenges of desert life. Artisanship and craft. Everyday life was enriched by craftsmanship. Women wove textiles in intricate patterns, each design carrying meaning about family, tribe, or region. Potters shaped vessels for water and food storage, decorating them with geometric motifs. Leatherworkers crafted saddles, sandals, and containers for caravans. These crafts were both practical and artistic, reflecting the creativity of people who transformed limited resources into objects of utility and beauty. The rhythm of the desert. Above all, daily life was shaped by the rhythm of the desert itself. Dawn marked the time to begin travel or work, avoiding the heat of midday when activity slowed to rest in shade. Evening brought renewed activity, meals, storytelling, and socializing beneath starlit skies. The desert's cycles of heat and cool, scarcity and abundance, hardship and joy structured every action, embedding nature into the fabric of life. Through food, clothing, rituals, and family, desert peoples created cultures of resilience and meaning. Their daily lives were not only about survival, but about building identity, community, and continuity in landscapes that demanded respect and ingenuity. While deserts often evoke images of silence, sand, and stillness, history tells another story, one of conflict, conquest, and survival through war. For desert civilizations, warfare was not an exception, but a recurring reality. Scarcity of resources, rivalry over trade routes, and the need to protect oases meant that every tribe and kingdom had to be ready for battle. Strategies born of the desert. The desert itself was both ally and enemy. Armies could vanish into dunes, ambushing travelers or rival forces who underestimated the land. Knowledge of water sources gave a decisive advantage. A commander who controlled wells controlled life itself. To invade an enemy without securing these lifelines was suicide. Light cavalry was the backbone of desert warfare. Camels, uniquely adapted to harsh climates, gave armies the ability to move swiftly across vast stretches where heavier forces would falter. Camel-mounted warriors could strike suddenly, retreat into the sands, and reappear miles away. Horses, though requiring more water, were prized for speed and maneuverability in close combat. Weapons of desert armies. The tools of war reflected both tradition and practicality. Spears and javelins allowed for quick strikes. Bows, particularly composite bows, gave warriors deadly range, with arrows tipped in metal or hardened bone. Swords curved into scimitars allowed swift slashing strikes from horseback, ideal for raids and duels. Shields of wood, leather, or woven reeds offered defense without slowing movement. Armor was minimal, as heat made heavy protection unbearable. Warriors often relied on agility and knowledge of terrain rather than brute force. War chants, drums, and banners raised morale and signaled commands across the chaos of combat. Famous desert battles. Throughout history, deserts became stages for decisive encounters. Caravans clashed over trade dominance. Empires marched across dunes, and nomadic tribes fought to preserve independence. One striking example comes from the Battle of Karkar, 853 BCE, in Syria's desert margins, where Assyrian forces faced a coalition of smaller kingdoms. Though fought on the edge of the desert, it showed how alliances and strategy determined survival. Centuries later, Arab tribes used desert warfare to remarkable effect during the early Islamic conquests. Light cavalry, hit-and-run tactics, and mastery of harsh landscapes allowed relatively small forces to outmaneuver larger imperial armies. Battles fought near desert outposts changed the political map of vast regions. Even in modern times, the desert has remained a theater of conflict. From North Africa in World War II, where mobility and supply lines determined outcomes, to more recent struggles where terrain dictates military strategy. The essence remains the same. The desert punishes the unprepared. Raids and tribal warfare. Not all conflicts were grand battles. Raiding, known in many desert traditions, was a way to assert dominance, gain resources, or maintain honor. Small bands of warriors would strike rival camps, seize goods or livestock, and retreat before larger retaliation could arrive. These raids reinforced social cohesion within tribes, trained young fighters, and ensured that no community grew complacent. Fortresses and defenses. Desert cities built fortifications to withstand both raids and armies. High walls of mud brick or stone, watchtowers overlooking approaches, and gates that could be sealed against intruders marked urban centers. Some fortresses stood along trade routes, guarding caravans and demanding tolls. Others, like the Nabatean strongholds of Petra, relied as much on secret water systems as on walls for their defense. The human cost of war. Though strategy and valor are often celebrated, desert warfare carried a heavy toll. Villages could be left without food if herds were seized. Wells could be poisoned or destroyed, condemning communities to slow suffering. Families mourned lost warriors, while survivors bore scars, physical and emotional, that shaped songs, poems, and legends. Yet war also forged identities. Victories created heroes, defeats forged determination, and the cycle of conflict ensured that desert peoples valued courage, loyalty, and honor above all else. In lands where life itself was a struggle, warfare was seen not as glory, but as necessity. The desert as eternal judge. More than generals or kings, it was the desert itself that determined the outcome of war. Armies who respected it, who traveled lightly, planned carefully, and moved with the rhythm of its sands, survived. Those who underestimated it were swallowed whole. In this way, the desert became an eternal judge, impartial and unforgiving, deciding fates as much as swords or arrows. While deserts often evoke images of silence, sand, and stillness, history tells another story, one of conflict, conquest, and survival through war. For desert civilizations, warfare was not an exception, but a recurring reality. Scarcity of resources, rivalry over trade routes, and the need to protect oases meant that every tribe and kingdom had to be ready for battle. Strategies born of the desert. The desert itself was both ally and enemy. Armies could vanish into dunes, ambushing travelers or rival forces who underestimated the land. Knowledge of water sources gave a decisive advantage. A commander who controlled wells controlled life itself. To invade an enemy without securing these lifelines was suicide. Light cavalry was the backbone of desert warfare. Camels, uniquely adapted to harsh climates, gave armies the ability to move swiftly across vast stretches where heavier forces would falter. Camel-mounted warriors could strike suddenly, retreat into the sands, and reappear miles away. Horses, though requiring more water, were prized for speed and maneuverability in close combat. Weapons of desert armies. The tools of war reflected both tradition and practicality. Spears and javelins allowed for quick strikes. Bows, particularly composite bows, gave warriors deadly range, with arrows tipped in metal or hardened bone. Swords curved into scimitars allowed swift slashing strikes from horseback, ideal for raids and duels. Shields of wood, leather, or woven reeds offered defense without slowing movement. Armor was minimal, as heat made heavy protection unbearable. Warriors often relied on agility and knowledge of terrain rather than brute force. War chants, drums, and banners raised morale and signaled commands across the chaos of combat. Famous desert battles. Throughout history, deserts became stages for decisive encounters. Caravans clashed over trade dominance, empires marched across dunes, and nomadic tribes fought to preserve independence. One striking example comes from the Battle of Karkar, 853 BCE, in Syria's desert margins, where Assyrian forces faced a coalition of smaller kingdoms. Though fought on the edge of the desert, it showed how alliances and strategy determined survival. Centuries later, Arab tribes used desert warfare to remarkable effect during the early Islamic conquests. Light cavalry, hit-and-run tactics, and mastery of harsh landscapes allowed relatively small forces to outmaneuver larger imperial armies. Battles fought near desert outposts changed the political map of vast regions. Even in modern times, the desert has remained a theater of conflict. From North Africa in World War II where mobility and supply lines determined outcomes, to more recent struggles where terrain dictates military strategy. The essence remains the same. The desert punishes the unprepared. Raids and tribal warfare. Not all conflicts were grand battles. Raiding, known in many desert traditions, was a way to assert dominance, gain resources, or maintain honor. Small bands of warriors would strike rival camps, seize goods or livestock, and retreat before larger retaliation could arrive. These raids reinforced social cohesion within tribes, trained young fighters, and ensured that no community grew complacent. Fortresses and defenses. Desert cities built fortifications to withstand both raids and armies. High walls of mud brick or stone, watchtowers overlooking approaches, and gates that could be sealed against intruders marked urban centers. Some fortresses stood along trade routes, guarding caravans and demanding tolls. Others, like the Nabatean strongholds of Petra, relied as much on secret water systems as on walls for their defense. The human cost of war. Though strategy and valor are often celebrated, desert warfare carried a heavy toll. Villages could be left without food if herds were seized. Wells could be poisoned or destroyed, condemning communities to slow suffering. Families mourned lost warriors, while survivors bore scars, physical and emotional, that shaped songs, poems, and legends. Yet war also forged identities. Victories created heroes, defeats forged determination, and the cycle of conflict ensured that desert peoples valued courage, loyalty, and honor above all else. In lands where life itself was a struggle, warfare was seen not as glory, but as necessity. The desert as eternal judge. More than generals or kings, it was the desert itself that determined the outcome of war. Armies who respected it, who traveled lightly, planned carefully, and moved with the rhythm of its sands, survived. Those who underestimated it were swallowed whole. In this way, the desert became an eternal judge, impartial and unforgiving, deciding fates as much as swords or arrows. Centuries have passed since the height of ancient desert civilizations, yet the sands continue to whisper their stories. What was once buried, cities, tombs, and forgotten trade routes, has been brought to light by modern archaeology, reminding us that the desert never truly erases. It merely conceals. Rediscovery of lost cities. In the 19th and 20th centuries, explorers and archaeologists ventured into deserts with notebooks, shovels, and unshakable determination. They uncovered cities like Petra, carved into rose-red cliffs, and Palmyra, with its colonnaded streets still standing against the sky. In Egypt, endless desert excavation revealed not only pharaohs' tombs, but also workers' villages, tools, and everyday objects that made ancient life tangible. Satellite imagery now reveals patterns invisible from the ground, buried caravan paths, forgotten wells, and outlines of settlements long lost. Technology has turned deserts into open books, allowing us to trace the flow of trade, migration, and culture with unprecedented clarity. Treasures of archaeology. The findings are not merely monuments or treasures, they are echoes of daily life. Pottery shards that once held water, textiles preserved in dry sands, inscriptions carved into stone. All give voice to people who lived, struggled, and dreamed. The desert's dryness, harsh as it is, often preserved these relics better than fertile lands could, turning sands into natural archives. From scrolls found in Judean caves to beads unearthed in Saharan tombs, each discovery reshapes our understanding. Desert archaeology teaches us that civilizations we thought of as isolated were, in fact, deeply connected, thriving on exchange, creativity, and resilience. The desert as teacher beyond material remains, the desert itself offers lessons still relevant today. It teaches humility. Those who ignored its power, whether armies or empires, were undone. It teaches adaptation. Survival requires ingenuity, from water conservation to trade networks. And it teaches patience. Life moves with its rhythms, not against them. In a world facing climate challenges, desert peoples of the past offer inspiration. Their irrigation systems, caravans, and social bonds reveal models of sustainability, cooperation, and balance with nature. Modern societies, often overwhelmed by abundance, can learn from their discipline and respect for resources. timeless inspiration. The desert also inspires imagination. Writers, poets, and filmmakers draw on its vast emptiness to symbolize both danger and possibility. Pilgrims still cross it in search of spiritual awakening. Travelers stand in awe at ruins glowing in twilight, feeling history press close, as if the stones themselves remember. In this way, the desert civilizations live on, not only in ruins, museums, or books, but in the very ideas of endurance, mystery, and beauty that the desert embodies. They remind us that greatness does not always arise in fertile valleys or along mighty rivers. Sometimes it emerges in the harshest landscapes, where survival itself becomes an act of genius. A closing reflection, from myths and legends to daily life, from battles and raids to caravans of luxury, from collapse to rediscovery. The story of desert civilizations is vast and unending. They were never mere survivors. They were creators, innovators, and connectors. Their sands cradled both hardship and brilliance, shaping cultures that influenced the world far beyond their horizons. And as we gaze upon their ruins today, the desert still speaks. Its silence is not empty. It is full of memory. Its winds do not erase. They carry stories across centuries. Its dunes shift, but beneath them lies the unshakable truth that human ingenuity, spirit, and resilience can flourish even in the harshest of worlds. So, as you leave this story behind, carry with you the desert's lesson that endurance, creativity, and unity can build civilizations where none should exist. And perhaps the next time you see a desert, you will not see emptiness, but the echoes of lives once lived, dreams once pursued, and stories still unfolding beneath the sands.